Here we go. We're going live. All right. Hello, everybody. I am live now. So if you can hear me and everything is working as it should, please type llama in the chat so I can see that we are good to get started. Good morning, afternoon, evening, wherever you are. Type llama in the chat so we can see you're ready to go. All right, I think we're good to go. I'm hearing myself. Hey guys, my name is Anna. I'm the host today, and we have Kristin Wauson with us as our guest artist. So we're so excited to have her here today. If you guys have questions, I will be passing those along to Kristin. So make sure you type question in all caps in the chat so I can easily pull that into, so I can see that clearly and I can pass them along to Kristin as she is drawing with us today. Just a reminder, we do these free online demos every Sunday, Tuesday, and Friday. So make sure you subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications to stay up to date and get alerted when we are going live. Our next one is Tuesday, March 16th at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with Jola Sopek, and he is going to be demonstrating learning botanical style textures with watercolor. So take a minute, share this link with your artist friends so they can jump on and join us today. We have a really awesome demonstration, and Kristin is going to do a little sketchbook flip to get us started. So Kristin, why don't you go ahead and take it away?
Okay. So these are just some thumbnails, basically, that I started doing these when I was working on Etchr, and I would draw a thumbnail at night, and then I would paint it later the next day with ink. So my sketchbook ended up filled with all of these horses, and I've had a thing for horses ever since I was little. So they've always been a favorite subject, which is why I picked them for Inktober. But here's some pages from my sketchbook.
They're so beautiful. There's so much detail. I'm so excited.
They're more like, I'm not going to draw the super detailed ones. So these are just like the, I would do like a rough sort of stylized one before I drew it big. And some deer.
They're so cute. How many horse lovers do we have out there? I'm so excited to see this in action. Get some great tips.
Oh, and there's bears on this page, actually. I like to draw all animals, so.
That's awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and post our reference photo link into the chat. Kristin, do you want to tell us a little bit about the mood board and why you decided to go that route with the reference photo?
Yeah, so horses can get really complicated because they have so many legs, and I mean, lots of animals have 4 legs, but horses, I don't know, something about their proportions and their legs and the way that they bend, it is really helpful to look at reference when you're drawing them for posing. So a lot of times what I'll do is I will go on Pinterest and I will try to find different poses, just like I would if I were drawing a human, and use that to kind of figure out my poses so that I end up with a pose that looks like it could happen in real life. So what I did was I have a board of horses that I put together, and y'all can use that to draw your own horses whenever. But I printed out a few of them, and so I was gonna I'm gonna use those to do my sketching.
Awesome. We're excited to get started. So let's jump in. You ready?
Okay, so I have lots of erasers because you always need a different kind of eraser for all different problems, I guess, that need to be erased. I'm going to be using a smudge stick, and I have this pencil, which is the Pilot Croquis, and I like to use this to start out to kind of get the gesture, because a lot of times if you go in, and especially when the anatomy looks really complicated, if you try to focus in too early on, detailed anatomy, then you end up with a drawing that looks super stiff. And I find that if I use something like this, or you might even use like a pencil lead and a holder, or something along those lines that you would use for like gesture drawing, it helps you kind of get the motion before you go in and start getting too detailed, I guess. So
you don't have to commit as much with that one. You're just getting the idea.
Right. And you start, very light, and if it looks terrible to start with, then you can always erase it or rub it out with a smudge stick. It's not very serious to start with. So that's how I start. And then later I'll do more details. I like these Palomino Blackwing pencils. They have a good eraser, and the lead is very dark and smooth. So I like to use those at the end. So just start.
Yeah. What kind of pencil was that again? The gesture drawing one?
So this is, I think I'm saying this right. It's the Pilot Croquis, Croquis. And
Awesome.
I'm using 6B lead.
So with 6B lead.
So I would start just by getting the sort of spine, which in this case is kind of the line of action, but not always. And if you try to make the legs too detailed at first, it can get really overwhelming. So I just try to keep them very basic, and usually actually don't even draw the hoof at first. And I'll just add that later. And I also try to keep the legs, pretty angular, I guess, or at least like if you think in terms of straights and curves, like one side of them would be very angular, and then I would try to keep the other side smoother. And you can see that my lines are kind of all over the place right now, and it doesn't matter.
So there's a question about which photo you're using, and which one are you? Sorry, go ahead.
If you look at the Pinterest board, the one that I'm working on right now is the very first one on my horse Pinterest board. And I'm gonna have to rotate my paper some. Sorry, it's kind of hard to.
Is this the black horse?
Yes, that's right.
Yes, awesome. So you're kind of using very simplified shapes as you go to kind of get the idea of where you're placing them?
Yeah, just keep it like super simple and basic, and try to get I guess, the feeling and the gesture and the action of it without getting too focused on the details right away. I'm like, I've already figured out his head is too high. And now it's gone, so. So this one had a lot more of a curve in the neck.
How do you notice that when you have to change something like that?
I guess I just compare kind of how close the head would have been to the legs, and it seemed like it was too far out. And the way that this horse's spine is, you see like a lot of like forward action. Like you can see the legs are kind of leaning forward, and it just wasn't getting that feeling in the, like this back leg could be more angled back to give it a little more of a leaning forward, kind of pushing forward motion. And then I just keep the head very simple. Horse proportions, an easy way to gauge, I guess, if you have sort of the right proportion is if you measure, usually the length of the head is the same as the width of the neck. And it's also the same as this area from here to here. And from here to here, those are all going to be approximately the same distance. And then if a horse is standing up with its head upright, usually you would measure about 2.5 heads is the height of a normal horse, I guess. But of course, like there's different breeds of horses that are all slightly different. Okay, so now that I've done this, I'll go in and kind of clean up my mess just a little. Not too bad. And then grab the other pencil. This is where I might start making all dizzy. Spinning. Then you can go back in and kind of refine things.
And what kind of lead is in that pencil? Is there a...
This says Palomino Blackwing 4, and I think this is like a special edition. I'm not sure exactly, but I am going to guess that it's like a B4 or a B6 also. It's pretty dark and soft and very smudgy, as you will soon see. I'm going to make a smudgy mess of this entire page. My left hand.
So you prefer that darker lead, softer lead? Yeah.
I should probably start with something, probably if I use the croquis with like this one with something a little harder to start with, it would probably be better, but I really like the soft lead.
Will you shift over for us a little? We're a little off screen. There you go, perfect.
Let me know if my hair gets in the way too.
So far, so good.
I'm adding some like kind of sharp edges on the front of this leg, but I'm going to keep the inside as smooth as I can. Just kind of gives it a little bit of a stylistic, I don't know, I like the way it looks. And also thinking about where you can, like, instead of just doing a straight line, where you can do sort of a slight curve, definitely helps give it some, I guess, grace and flow. And then there's a couple of breaks that happen in the horse's hindquarters. So this right here is like where the pelvis bone hits. So there's going to be like a little line break there, and then it's going to be relatively straight right here. And then this kind of does a zigzag. So it hits here and here and here. So you can see kind of an angle, like a direction change right here. And you will see another one right here and this one on the top. So adding those slight angle changes, I think, helps give it a little bit more structure than just making the butt. You could easily make the butt just like a circle, which a lot of times you see, I guess, explanations of how to draw a horse, or like, you know, they break it down and they'll do like a circle here and a circle here. And I think that's fine, but it kind of keeps you from wanting to go in and add those structural shapes once you've made it a circle. So I don't usually do that.
So those little angles really help make like a slight difference to the gesture of it?
I think it just gives it more like believability, like it has form and it has a skeleton, and it makes it feel, I guess, more alive.
That makes sense. It's looking so good already.
I should have used my Etchr sketchbook because this one has this giant spiral. It's very hard to draw around.
There's comments of everyone seeing how great this is. It's looking so good already.
Okay, and here we have, this is the withers, which is also where the scapula hits. So the bones underneath the horse go here, here. This is like, this is like the human deltoid. So that would be sort of like our shoulder. This is the elbow. And this is actually the wrist. And this hoof is really just one giant toe. It's really weird to think about.
So you're really thinking about the skeleton as you're drawing it as well.
I am, but I don't really like think about that at first, I guess. I just try to get the very simplified shapes. It's not until I go back in and tell it that I start thinking about that stuff.
Kim says, you make it look so easy.
Oh, it's just repetition. There are a lot of horses. And then on this one, oh, okay, so the next thing that I like to do is to add a little bit of value to it. So imagine that the sun is from above. I'll just go in and kind of darken a little with the blending stump, a few areas. And this is really where, if you've made a mistake with your lines, you can a lot of times just rub it out with the blending stump. So I have all these like extra lines, they're just going to disappear. Another thing is, I didn't do this, but if you add like a shadow underneath so that your horse's legs are actually look like they're touching the ground, it can help you make sure that you don't end up with like one leg that's, you know, too short. Might like focus in, draw like a really nice leg, and then realize that it's completely not the right length.
That's a good point. So that kind of helps you draw that line between one foot and the other.
Yeah. And I'll go back and forth with the blending stump and a pencil now. And then another thing that I like to do is to add some sort of directional lines that show, kind of emphasize the form. And also in places where there will be shadows is where I would do more of those. So like here, see how it kind of wraps around, so it's following the shape of the horse's leg.
Okay, so you're kind of curving it with the way the leg is flowing?
Yeah, it kind of gives a little bit of more sense of volume, and then also it makes your shadow areas more interesting. They're not just dark areas, they have some line to them, I guess.
And by going back in with the blending stump again, is that kind of softening those lines a little bit?
rotating. It's really hard to get the lines smooth, holding the paper one direction for me. So you got this leg, you'll see kind of comes in front of this like meaty part right there. That's the pectoralis of the horse. I think thinking about the different parts in terms of human anatomy makes it really helpful, because then you can like look at your own body and be like, oh, I have this part that does this when I move this way, and it makes it a little bit less foreign, I guess. There's a muscle that runs all the way from the ear down to the shoulder. And there's another one that goes that way. And I try not to go too crazy on the muscles, but I like to add just a few. This on the face is like a cheekbone kind of runs down there, and then there's another one here. Smiling. And the mane and tail is really like one of my favorite parts. I like to draw hair. But a lot of times you'll see some of the mane fall on one side of the neck, and then the rest of the mane fall on the other side of the neck.
Is there a different kind of stroke you're doing as you're drawing hair?
I try to do these lines that are like have sort of a rhythm to them. Let me show you. Instead of just, I mean, like if you just draw a bunch of straight lines, it's kind of boring. So I like to draw these kind of curving lines that they kind of flow together. And just kind of change up the direction. The more you practice them, the better your lines will get.
Alan says it's so neat that the little details make the drawing come alive, like the hair you just added. It looks awesome.
Thank you.
Can we scooch over just a little again? Perfect. Thank you.
And on the mane and the tail, I'll blend it and then go back in with the eraser to give it a little bit of a shine. I didn't actually finish working on the tail. This horse is an Arabian, because only Arabians lift their tails up like that, as far as I know. Little factoid left over from my childhood obsession of reading about horse breeds. And that's basically it. I'll go back and kind of work back and forth with the pencil and the blending stump. I might add like a little bit of indication of fur in some areas. Of course, also keeping in mind, like I said, the direction of the fur and also kind of the shape of the body. And I also will go back and darken lines that will appear in shadow, I guess, make them look a little bit heavier, just kind of an inking technique where areas where light hits, you would keep the lines thinner and a little more delicate, and then you go into the shadow areas and thicken them up some, and it just kind of gives the drawing more weight, and I don't know, it just makes it look better.
If you guys are drawing along with us today, make sure you share our work, or your work, not ours, well, ours together now. But use the hashtag Etchr Mini Workshop to share your work with us on Instagram or Facebook, and you'll be entered to have a chance to win the $50 gift voucher in our shop to use for some really cool art supplies, or some mini workshops you want to sign up for. Kristin is actually having a mini workshop. Kristin, do you want to tell us a little bit about your mini workshop?
So for my mini workshop, what we're going to do is we're going to do basically what I did for Inktober, which was to take one of these smaller sketches and make it into a larger painting. And I will be painting it with, we'll do some inking and watercolor washes over the top of it. So I will give you a unicorn sketch and then we will paint it together. It'll be lots of fun.
Awesome. Carmen says that they love the effect the stub is producing as you're blending.
They're super cheap and you can get a pack of like 5 of them. It's fun to play with them.
It definitely seems very useful to add like the softness to your drawing there. It looks awesome.
I said I was going to add highlights to them and I didn't do it.
And how would you add highlights?
I would go back in with one of the erasers. Actually, this one is really good for that too. This is a Tombow mono eraser and it's teeny tiny. And then you can just go in with it and basically you're drawing with the eraser to lift back out some of the value that you add to the blending stump. And just keep going.
Is there an easy way to decide where to add the highlights?
Well, you have to think about where the sun is coming from and also avoid the tendency that I have, which is to add highlights everywhere, because it's like if you don't choose small areas to add highlights, then they're just not going to have any impact. But I would just like for this one, if we imagine that the sun's shining down, you would probably get highlights all along the top of this horse, on the mane and the tail. I didn't actually darken the value, so I'm not adding any to his body. But just think about where the sun would hit, and where the sun wouldn't hit, it would be darkest in these areas, the creases of the leg. So actually that's another thing that I like to do, is to go in and add some like really dark spots where there would be an occlusion shadow. So that's where no light would hit, right in here. And that I think gives a lot of nice like contrast to the drawing. Could probably even add like a tiny bit right here.
Yeah, well, I can see those little details just make it pop a little bit more too. So I just posted a link for the mini workshop if you're wondering about that. Definitely sign up because we're going to be, Kristin's going to be using ink and showing you how you can take these drawings a step further. So it's going to be really awesome. And I will check the date on that really quick for you guys, but the link is posted in the chat. Are we switching to a new one?
Yeah, I was trying to decide which one I was going to switch to. All right. I guess I'll just move on to the second one on the Pinterest board to make it simple.
Awesome. I'll post the mood board one more time for you guys so you can see that. It's she's working with the second photo in the mood board now. And back with the gesture pencil.
The Roki, I hope I'm saying that right since I've said it now like 5 times.
It's one of those things, the more you say it, the less confident you are. It sounds right, but you're probably right.
This one got really big. I call these thumbnails. They started out really small when I first started doing them, and now they're much bigger than they used to be. This one has its leg kind of crossing under and behind. And the head is looking down. I'm kind of thinking I want it more to the side, so I'm changing that. You don't have to copy your reference exactly. And a lot of times I'll find several examples of a pose and I'll kind of like mishmash them together. And somebody looking more to the side.
So the mini workshop is April 3rd on a Saturday at 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Is there a place that you like to start when you begin your sketching?
This doesn't really apply with this one because the head is overlapping the back, but I think I tend to start with the position of the neck and then the spine, unless there's like a really strong action that needs to be emphasized elsewhere, like a horse that's bucking might have a different gesture than just like the spine. But if it's a horse where the gesture is mostly in the spine, then that's where I'll start. So I guess the line of action is really kind of the answer to that, I guess.
Okay, we have a comment from Jim. He says, how's Buddy doing?
How's what?
How's Buddy? Maybe you know who he is. He said you might know.
Jim Sudan?
Jim Dorwasak. I'm sorry, Jim, if I said your name wrong.
Sorry.
You can check out the chat later. Maybe that'll be helpful.
Okay, I'm switching over. I've spent too much time with this before.
Is there a place when you feel like it's a good time to switch after you finish the gesture?
When I realize that I'm trying to draw details with this big old bulky lead, then it's time to switch. It's not really made to draw details, so sometimes I'll not pay attention and start doing it, and then but really once you have the the basic shapes and your legs sort of placed, that's usually a good time to switch over when you're ready to add more details.
So Jim is really Julie.
Oh, Julie. Oh, Buddy is very excited right now. Okay, that all makes much more sense.
I'm glad we got that clarified. Sorry about that, Julie.
Buddy is here.
Buddy from Elf. Awesome.
Hanging out on my desk, and he's still very excited.
Tara says, your horses are elegant.
Oh, thank you, Tara.
Is there a trick to get the leg placement down on the ground? Because I see this one's a little tricky with the legs crossing.
Tricky. I shouldn't pick this one.
No, you've mastered it. It looks awesome. Just curious if you have any tips for trying to get the placement correct.
I really just think it's helpful to draw the ground plane. Really, with any illustration, adding the ground plane can save you a lot of headaches. So if you put that down first, then it makes it a little easier to figure out, I guess, where to. But I mean, if you focus on just drawing them as like a simple line to start with, that tends to help a lot, because then you're not sitting here like drawing this little muscle and then realize that the muscle's in the wrong spot. You kind of starting loose in general and moving to specific tends to work better.
And time is flying by. I forgot to tell you the first 20 minutes in, but we're at 40 minutes in.
Oh, wow.
I know. I'm sorry, I forgot to mention it, but these are looking awesome. And thank you guys, everyone, for joining us today as Kristin is showing us these awesome tricks with just sketching. It's awesome.
Let's make this one a unicorn.
Yay, love unicorns.
I like to do different horns on mine, not just straight horn.
So you can kind of have the freedom to change it as you want.
Sometimes I might even do, well, if it has two horns, it's not really a unicorn, but
And I'm going to post our survey link in the chat if you guys would like to fill that out for us, just to know how we can do better, what we can improve on, what we're doing really awesome with. We would love to hear from you, just to keep updating and keep improving for you all. So I put that in the chat for you. It takes about, I would say, 5 minutes at the most. So Sybil says she's having so much fun drawing these horses alongside you.
hi, Sybil.
So for this one, I see you're adding the shadow under the neck. Does that have to do with the placement of the head?
Yeah, because if the sun were shining down, it would hit the head, and then the head would make a shadow on the neck. It needs a little shadow there. It's not appeared.
As you're drawing, do you kind of decide where you need more darkness, or does that come as you keep going?
Yeah, I try to build the darks slowly so that I don't end up with a big dark spot that I have to try to erase. But yeah, the whole thing I feel like is just kind of an illustrator that I admire once described her process like a blind lady feeling around in the dark with a stick, and that's kind of how I feel most of the time when I'm drawing. I'm like, oh, how is this going to turn out? And I just keep going. It nearly always does. And the back leg on the horse, this is the heel. So this is like the equivalent of our heel. And if you think about when you're drawing a human ankle, the outer ankle usually appears higher than the lower one. The same thing applies to the horse. There's basically all of the anatomy things you can translate to drawing animals. Same things that you learn in figure drawing. So knowing how to draw human figures can be really helpful.
Kim has a question for you about using the blending stump. Do you find there's a good one versus a bad one?
I mean, it's really just, it's like cardboard compressed into a tube. So I haven't ever noticed a difference in them. They do come in different sizes. So you might sometimes need a smaller or a larger one depending on the job. And I know it's probably helpful to keep one end a little more pointed, because then you can get in and do more detailed stuff with the large one. But I've managed to mush mine completely on both ends.
And do you have to load it with lead before you're using it?
You can. It will get very dirty once you start using it. But if you have like a brand new one and want it to have lead on it, then you can just like scribble on a piece of paper and get it dirty.
Another comment about how beautiful these are turning out.
Thank you.
And I'm just going to mention the mini workshop again. It's April 3rd. Sign up because we're going to see Kristin take this a step further and add some ink to it. So this is your warm up and there's more to come. I'll post that link in the chat again. And I'm going to go ahead and put your Instagram on there and your website so people can see your other work as well and jump in and see what Kristin has on there. She has some really awesome stuff. So do you have horses, or what inspired you to start drawing horses?
No, I always wanted a horse. Never got a horse. Now that I always asked for one when I was a kid, and I didn't realize until I was an adult how much trouble that actually would have been given on that whim. I collected these horses that probably some people also collected who are listening. The Breyer model horses. They're like a plastic resin and they're pretty large. They're like about 9 inches tall. And I asked for them for like every holiday, birthday, Christmas, everything. That's all I wanted was more horses. I had like about 50 of them at one point. So I just pretended that they were my pets. My mother-in-law, Julia, though, who was in the chat, has 5 miniature horses. So I do occasionally get to get my horse fix when she comes over. They ride in the car.
That's awesome. So we have another question from our viewer. How do you decide where to put your shadows?
I mean, thinking about the horse's body in a 3-dimensional space, I mean, you can light them. You think about like their belly is like a ball. The hindquarters is like a ball. So you would light it, you know, imagining the sun's coming from above, the same way you would light a ball. And when it curves around into shadow, then it gets darker. And really most of the highlights, if the sun is shining from above, most of them are going to be from about this point up, because as the belly begins to curve underneath and these other limbs kind of go underneath, then you lose the sunlight on them. So really, as soon as the ball curves the other way, that's when the light falls off.
There's another question. Is the blending stump is it easier to use than just a pencil and eraser?
It just kind of depends, I guess. If you're wanting to put more value on your drawing, then I like using that. Also, I like that I can sort of blend away my mistakes sometimes. You know, if I have like extra lines here, I want that to go away, and it kind of makes it disappear without having to go in with the eraser.
So it's kind of like it's still there, but it's not as harsh.
Yeah, and it's just like an easy way to add some value and dimension to your drawing. How much time do we have? Should I do another one?
We have about 10 minutes left. If you want to start another one, and we can open up our chat to Q&As as you're starting the next one. And I also just want to remind you guys to post your work and use that hashtag Etchr Mini Workshop. We'd love to see what you're doing. So we'll go ahead and open this time up for the Q&A portion of our live demonstration. And are you working on the third reference photo now?
Now I've skipped to the last horse on the top row, the one that has its nose up in the air. Just because I like that gesture.
Do you have any tips for left-handed drawers?
Just
or artists?
wash your hands when you're done. I have like a special little drawing glove that I use sometimes, but I find that it just like still smudges things around everywhere. If you care about your paper smudging, putting a piece of blank paper or wax paper under your hand uh, can keep you from making a complete disaster of your paper. But I tend to just let it get smudgy unless it's something that I'm gonna scan and work on later on the computer. Um, but also working from right to left is helpful, but I don't ever do that either. Basically, don't do what I'm doing. That's what I'm saying.
Do as I say, not as I do. What kind of sketchbook are you using?
This is a Strathmore visual journal, and I like it because it's pretty cheap, especially if you order them like from Jerry's Artorama or somewhere like that. They're very inexpensive. I have a lot of trouble sketching in a expensive sketchbook. I will just like stare at the blank page and never draw on it because I'm worried about making a bad drawing. So it kind of helps me for a sketchbook to use something a little cheaper. And then once I get, like I have nice sketchbooks, but I wait until I have one of these that I like, and then I'll transfer it over to the nicer paper, either by eyeballing it or lately I've been using that Etchr Mirror, which is really cool because you can just take a picture of it with your phone and sort of reflect it onto whatever surface you're using. Takes the fear out of drawing in a nice sketchbook.
That's awesome. I'll post that link for you guys in the chat for the Etchr Mirror. And there's more questions. Do you ever put a saddle or harness on your horse or unicorn?
Sometimes I do, but not that often. Mostly because drawing tack and things like that, you really have to, I guess, study the parts of the saddles and all that, and that's just like another layer of research that I haven't really done lately. I used to make little tiny saddles for my model horses, but I feel like I would have to study all over again to remember all the parts of the saddle.
Do you tend to use the circle to sketch before you make the body?
I think of it in terms of a circle, but I don't really draw it as a circle that often. Because I am trying to still keep in mind like the bone structure underneath and how it affects the shape, I guess. Because like this side is flat, this side is a little bit flat. I just don't want to like decide in advance that it's a circle and then not think about those things.
How close are your deer to horses in your drawings? Like, could you convert this to deer?
Yeah, I mean, most animals, especially four-legged animals, have very similar bone structure, and really it's just a difference of proportions mostly. A deer has, like with a horse, you'll see this like arc of the neck, and with a deer, it actually kind of arcs the other way. So both sides of the neck would arc this way. Whereas a horse, you see the neck is like this. but no, definitely knowing all of the parts of a horse would make it much easier for you to understand how a deer is put together, because it's really mostly the same. It's just different proportions.
Earlier you were even saying that you're thinking about the human body parts in relation to what the horse looks like, which is really neat. That's a neat thought to have as you're drawing these horses.
Yeah, it makes it more relatable and more understandable to think of it in terms of a human body, because we all have a human body. So even if
Definitely.
it looks like, you can kind of like poke around and figure it out.
All right, and the next question has to do with inking. So I'm going to go ahead and mention the mini workshop one more time, because Kristin is going to be doing some inking during that time. Do you want to just share that information again about your mini workshop?
Yeah, so for the mini workshop, I'm going to have, actually, I can show them the sketch in progress for that.
Yeah, sure.
I think this is going to be the drawing. I'm going to give everyone a download of a sketch, so it will just be a pencil sketch, and I've already inked on top of this some, but you'll have the pencil sketch, and then for the class we'll ink it, and then we'll paint it with watercolor washes. So I can show you some examples of what my Inktober stuff look like. So it'll be painted.
That's awesome. So you guys should definitely sign up, because there is so much to see from Kristin. So I posted that link in the chat. Make sure you sign up for her mini workshop so you can see more of the inking process and take the sketching practice a step further. And oh, go ahead, Kristin.
I was just saying my phone cord is making it really hard to turn pages.
That's okay. We can see them. They're beautiful. And I'm going to go ahead and post our survey one more time. Yeah, look, people are saying, really love this demo. Wow, that's so beautiful. Wowzers. Haven't heard that word in a while. That's awesome. And I'm posting the survey in the chat now, so you guys can just take a second to fill that out for us. But we are pretty much wrapping up for today. So I just wanted to say thank you to Kristin one more time for being here with us today. And thank you everybody else for joining us. This was an awesome time for me, just watching and seeing Kristin's her practice here. So Kristin, would you like to say anything to wrap us up?
No, just thanks for coming and watching, and I hope everybody had fun drawing today. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Here's her sketch one more time. And thank you so much for being here. Have a lovely rest of your day. Bye.